From Thom Hartmann's Daily Take Substack. Is corruption the new American dream? A nation rebuilt on the gospel of the grift? Where honesty is punished, power is bought, and every rule has a price, Trump's turned the dream of opportunity into an industry of deception. Published October 27, 2025. The following is a song inspired by this article.
They built their tower out of fear and gold, sold out the truth for the lies they told. The flag still wave, but the stars don't gleam. There's blood in the gears of the old machine. Is corruption the American dream, where money's the god and power redeems? The deal goes down while the people sleep. Freedom don't come cheap. They call it business, they call it smart. Well, they buy the law and sell the heart. The hustlers rise, the honest fall, and justice hangs in a marble hall. Is corruption the new American dream, where the dollar decides what the truth must mean? The poor pay the bill for the rich man's scheme. Freedom don't come cheap. We traded courage for comfort and conscience for a screen. Now every soul's for sale in this marketplace of dreams. So tell me, brother, what's left to redeem when the crown belongs to whoever can scheme? We've turned the gospel of greed into creed, and freedom don't come cheap.
When corruption becomes endemic, democracy dies from the inside out. Trump's family's grift is teaching America's elites that power can be bought, just as it is in Putin's Russia and Orban's Hungary, and it's already distorting our economy. When I was working for an international relief agency in the early 1980s, I went into Uganda during the war and famine that began when Tanzanian troops invaded to throw out Idi Amin. To get there, I had to pay a $50 bribe to the Ugandan official at their embassy in Nairobi to get my visa. When I was leaving through the half-destroyed Entebbe airport, 3 soldiers pointed their automatic weapons at my face and demanded, quote, half, end quote, of whatever money I had left before letting me through the boarding area. In Haiti, a cabinet-level official tried to solicit a $15,000 bribe from me in exchange for our agency getting permission to operate there. I turned it down. In a remote part of Mexico on a business trip, a police officer drove me off the road to demand $100 or else I'd, quote, spend the night in jail, end quote. They were all quick, unforgettable lessons in how corruption works. When it becomes the default operating system of a country, it drains not only cash and makes it tough for honest business people to earn a living, but, far more importantly, destroys democracy itself. That same poison is now spreading here. The corruption of Donald Trump and his children, the open solicitation of bribes disguised as, quote, investments, end quote, in the jet plane, the crypto windfalls, the foreign hotel projects and, quote, licensing fees, the, quote, donations and gifts that appear tied to pardons, tariffs, or regulatory relief have begun to teach America's morbidly rich and business leaders that access to our government is now a purchasable commodity. Remember when Apple's Tim Cook brought a chunk of 24-karat gold to gift Trump, apparently hoping for tariff exceptions? The long list of corporations that are paying for the Epstein ballroom, presumably in expectation of better treatment from the Trump regime. The billions the UAE gave Trump's kids just before Trump gave them chips they weren't supposed to have because of national security. Thom Hartmann taking $50,000 in a paper bag from an FBI agent, and Trump, Bondi, and Noam laughing it off. Or headlines like today's, quote, close friend of J.D. Vance skirts normal channels to take over key health research, end quote. And $130 million Pentagon donor has ties to Jeffrey Epstein, end quote. Once that expectation of corruption takes hold, it reshapes an entire economy. It tells corporations, billionaires, and foreign governments alike that the fastest way to win contracts or avoid tariffs and other regulations isn't through innovation or competition, but through flattery, payment, or tribute to Don, his wife, or his children. This is exactly what happened in Trump's role models of Hungary and Russia. In Russia, researchers estimate roughly 15 to 20% of the nation's entire GDP vanishes each year into the pockets of Putin, his oligarchs, and loyal politicians. Some analysts even put it higher, approaching a quarter of the economy when you include the broader shadow sector. In Hungary, corruption is smaller in absolute size, but is just as corrosive. Public contracts are routinely overpriced by 20% or more, and a fifth of companies operate not on market principles but on loyalty to Viktor Orban. The result is predictable: stagnant productivity, collapsing services, and a hollowed-out middle class as the Orban family becomes fabulously rich. Corporation functions like a tax, but one that never funds schools or bridges. It rewards obedience and punishes competence. Once leaders and their families start selling favors, the smart business move isn't to innovate, but to curry favor. The fastest path to profit is proximity to power. Small businesses get crushed because they can't afford the, quote, entry fee, end quote. Big ones stagnate because every decision runs through political connections. Ordinary people watch their roads crumble, their wages flatten, and their faith in fairness evaporate. The economy quietly reoptimizes itself around bribery instead of merit, and everyone, except the oligarchs, pays. This is where America is today. Trump has already normalized the spectacle of CEOs and foreign leaders making pilgrimages to the White House or Mar-a-Lago with million-dollar checks or lavish gifts. His family's private ventures, from crypto to foreign hotels to golf resorts, are magnets for anyone seeking goodwill from the man with the power to sign their contracts or reduce their tariffs. And with 5 corrupt Republicans on the Supreme Court having legalized unlimited political bribery of themselves and politicians through Buckley versus Vallejo, First National Bank of Boston versus Bellotti, and Citizens United versus FEC, there's barely a law left to stop it. We've seen this movie before, In every kleptocracy, every dictatorship throughout history, the leader's personal enrichment becomes national policy. Regulators are neutered, watchdogs are fired, and the press is bullied into silence through lawsuits, regulation, and oligarchic purchase. Then comes the strong-arm tactics, the intimidation of lawyers, journalists, and opponents under the guise of, quote, law and order, end quote. It's what Putin did when Alexei Navalny exposed Gazprom's graft and paid with his life. It's what Orban did when he had critics of his corruption prosecuted and bankrupt. And now, here, attorneys defending protesters are being detained at airports while Trump suspends enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act so he, his billionaire buddies, and his family members can profit from foreign deals. Corruption doesn't just rot morality. It wrecks economies. When a nation's leadership is for sale, domestic and foreign corporations start bidding instead of building. Economists call it, quote, state capture, end quote. Private interests rewriting the rules for their own benefit. Studies from the IMF and World Bank show that captured states lose growth, investment, and trust, while inequality soars. In Russia's case, that loss adds up to hundreds of billions of dollars every year. In Hungary, GDP per capita has fallen far behind its once equal neighbors. The same dynamic is taking shape here as tax breaks, tariffs, and deregulation are auctioned off to the highest bidders. For most Americans, this translates into worse schools, fewer jobs, and higher prices. Every time a corporation pays a bribe to secure a contract, it folds that, quote, cost of doing business, end quote, into what you and I pay at the store or in taxes. Every time a billionaire buys a loophole or a pardon, the rest of us pick up the tab. Meanwhile, the honest business owner who refuses to play along loses bids, the worker loses bargaining power, and democracy itself loses credibility. The economy becomes a closed club guarded by money, loyalty, and fear. Recovering from this kind of rot isn't easy, but history shows it can be done. Countries that have clawed their way back from systemic corruption did it by prosecuting openly corrupt leaders while making the sale of influence difficult and dangerous, forcing transparency into contracts, requiring officials to divest from private holdings, empowering independent prosecutors, protecting whistleblowers, and putting every government transaction online where citizens can see it. The sunlight approach works because it raises the cost of corruption higher than its payoff. That's the crossroads we now face. We can follow Russia and Hungary down the path where 15 to 20% of national wealth disappears into private hands each year, or we can defend the idea that government exists to serve the public, not enrich the Trump dynasty. If we fail, America will cease to be a democracy in any meaningful sense. We'll become a market, one where laws, tariffs, and justice aren't just products to be bought and sold by those with the closest access to Trump or his family members. I've seen what the world looks like up close, staring down the barrel of a soldier's rifle at Entebbe Airport. The stakes aren't abstract. Corruption is the moment when fear replaces fairness, when power replaces principle, and when Americans become customers of their own government instead of citizens. If we let Trump and his circle finish that transformation, America won't just resemble Putin's Russia. It will have become just another tin-pot dictatorship with a fabulously rich, quote, royal, end quote, entourage, and a vast class of the struggling working poor who can't afford to spiff the first family.